Welcome back to this 9th video in a series in which I'm recording myself as I learn just enough about Python to build a web app that does something practical. In this video, I'm going to wrap up my usermapper.py project. It's good enough, but there's a few things that I probably should do to make it better. I'm not going to do them now. What I am going to do is record some issues in GitHub to remind myself of some improvements I might make at a later date. But before I do that, I'm going to save a requirements file, which will help anyone who wants to run this program load the right dependencies before they run it. I'll open up a terminal window, navigate to my project folder, and activate the virtual environment for the project. Now that I'm back in my virtual environment, I can use the pip freeze command to get a list of all the dependencies for this project, and pip freeze will show me everything that's been installed by pip in this virtual environment. There's a lot of stuff there I don't need, and I don't know why all that was installed. I think it was probably installed by VS Code when I installed the Python extension because I was in my virtual environment when I did that. I know for sure the only thing I need here is PyYAML. To create a Requirements.txt file, you just pipe all of this output into that file from the command line, like this. And since I want to get rid of all these extra things, I should edit that file. So I don't need asteroid, isort, this thing, that thing, pylint I don't need. And I don't necessarily need this exact version of PyYAML. If someone uses pip to load all the requirements for this project in the future, I want them to get the latest version of PyYAML. So I will just remove the version in this file. And then whenever I run the command pip -r requirements.txt, it should only install the latest version of PyYAML. There, now I've got my latest version of requirements.txt. I should commit this to Git because this is a change to the project that I need to make sure is recorded in my Git repository. And if I just do a git commit, it sends me to an editor where I can enter my git commit message. So if I don't use the git commit -m option and then enter in a text string for the message, I can edit in a fairly complex and long message if I need to. And there's the new commit message, added requirements.txt. Now I should send this up to my GitHub account. Great, done. And I was working in the master branch there, so I don't need to do anything else. Last night, I tested my guacamole usermapping.xml authorization file. I tested it on another system, and I noticed a problem. So I think I'm just going to exercise GitHub's issues features here just to record the problem and record the fix to sort of track the story of what I'm changing. I'll also add some feature enhancements as issues just so that I remember what they are in the future in case I ever revisit this project. And since this is in a public repository in GitHub, who knows, maybe someone who likes the project will fix some of these issues for me. Issues is a feature that belongs on GitHub. It's not built into Git. This is an extra feature that GitHub offers on its website, and it's useful when you're collaborating with other people. You don't necessarily need to use this when you're an individual developer, but I thought it's good to just start exercising using issues and eventually pull requests. Pull requests is GitHub's version of the git merge command. It's more useful when you're working with others, although I do see individual developers using pull requests, again, as another way to document what they're doing. I'm working strictly with issues today, so I need to create a new issue. So I'll click on the New Issue button in the usermapper project in GitHub, and the first issue is going to be a defect I found. If you're writing a long issue report, you can mark this up with a heading, multiple headings. You can format some of the text. You can have lists, etc. You can add links. There's lots of things you can do in GitHub with issues, especially again, when you're collaborating with others, you can tag people and things like that. I submit the issue. So now I have a new issue, and the issue is number 1. That's important because I was reading about some of the integrations between Git and GitHub, and I think I can close this issue by mentioning issue number 1 in the commit message when I do that. While I'm here, I'll create all the issues I can think of. The next issue I want to enter is an enhancement. I want to make the program more flexible and allow the user to enter in the configuration file name when they run the program, because it may not always be in a file named config.yaml in the project directory. Now I can label GitHub issues, so I can go over here and enter in a label. There's some built-in labels already. Okay, this is an enhancement, and I would say this is definitely a good first issue for anyone who wants to help out. And I'll submit that. And I should go back to issue number 1 and label that as a bug. The next issue is just to add some error checking for the configuration file, and just to help someone who's trying to fill out the file. If there's something wrong, send them a helpful error message about what was wrong. And the next item is to add some documentation to the program in the form of doc strings to document the modules and the functions. And the next issue calls for using a library to build the XML output file. It's currently hard-coded. I just use some strings to build the tags. There's libraries available for Python that will do that for you, and that might be a better way to do this. It might even make the program a lot shorter. When I've got time, I should read the documentation for these and try it out. Another item to improve is to make the mapper data module test output more readable. Right now, I just print out the dictionaries using the default formatting provided by Python. There's a module called PrettyPrint built into Python that will print those out in a more readable way, which will make it clearer which dictionaries are nested inside which other dictionaries. And this last issue asks me to create a test environment so that I can test my usermapping.xml output files locally on this system. And to do that, I would create a test virtual machine that runs Guacamole so I can test generated usermapping.xml files. I don't know, maybe I should use Docker for that or something. But I should create some sort of test environment that's easy to spin up, quickly test the usermapping.xml file, and then move on. And that's all the issues I've created. Now, of course, I need to work on this protocol issue. So I'll open that up and I'm going to assign that to someone. I'm going to assign that to me. Now somebody owns that issue. That's me. And I'm going to work on that. One thing you can do in GitHub is I think you can create a... Now, if I wanted to start managing this issue in GitHub, I could create a pull request. And when I create that pull request, that's going to create a new branch in GitHub. And then I can pull that branch down to my local Git repository, fix the problem, push the branch back up, merge it by closing the pull request. But that's getting a little bit ahead of what I want to do right now. I'm just going to work with Git on my local machine and then push the change up to GitHub and then come back to GitHub and close this issue. I will start my Visual Code editor. I can see that it has automatically started the virtual environment. You can see if I open up a terminal, it automatically starts the virtual environment. This is one of the integrations that VS Code supports. Now in usermapper.py, the text that adds the parameters to every device includes the protocol name. The protocol name is in that dictionary that comes from mapperdata.py. So as a matter of fact, let's run that again and have a look at that dictionary. And you can see that the protocol in this example is RDP, the host name username, etc. Now I'm using the same code to generate all of these parameters. And what it's doing is it's creating a XML tag with an attribute built into it that names the protocol or names the host name. But for the protocol, I actually have to have a completely separate tag now that just says protocol, not param equals something. I need to modify the usermapper.py file up here in parameters where it's getting the parameters. I need to change this. When it gets information about the protocol in the parameters, it treats it differently. And I think the best way to do that is just to add an if statement inside this loop and treat that one line differently. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see if this works. I'll save the file and then run it. Seems to have run successfully, and there's the usermapping.xml file. And now I can see that that file format has changed and the protocol has a separate tag on it that looks like that. And all the other parameters have the normal param name equals an attribute and then the value. So that problem is fixed. So I should just go back to my, and I guess I'm doing this in the master branch since I didn't break off a separate branch to do this in. And I'll just check this in. And here's the integration. I'm fixing issue number 1 in GitHub. And let's see if this works. Okay, and then I click here to push the change up to GitHub. Now, if I go back to GitHub, I wonder if I'll see if this issue is automatically closed. Boom, look at that. Automatically closed. So that's an excellent integration. And I can see here, I can click on the actual commit, see the change. I can look at that up in GitHub. And that's why these issues really help me tell the story of the project. So at this point, I'm going to stop working on this file. I've practiced a little bit about Python, and I've been looking into the next step. I need to create a web app that does something practical. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse this code to build a web app that lets people build these usermapping.xml files on a website. I think that would be helpful for anybody. Although my use case is pretty specific, so it would have to be people that are working the way I'm working, but still, it would make a good example of doing something useful on a website. So that's what I'm going to do. And I've been looking into Flask, and I must say it certainly looks complicated. I was interested in Flask because a lot of people say it's a really simple project, easy to use. But I think you really need to know more about Python than I know right now to consider Flask easy to use. Some of the concepts that I really glossed over when I was studying Python, particularly object-oriented programming, decorators, functional programming, and things like that, are concepts that Flask embraces. So to really use Flask properly, or just to understand what Flask is doing and even just read example code that other people write, I need to go back, do a little bit of reading again about object-oriented programming in Python, functional programming in Python, and decorators. And then I still need to read the Flask documentation. So it might be a little while before I come back here and create another video. I might take a week to study this. And I'll also see if I can find some quick start videos or something that I can point to when I finally come back. So tonight, I didn't do a lot. All I did was fix one little problem, record potential enhancements for this project in the future, and talk a little bit about Flask. Thanks for listening.